God does bring new beginnings from end times, and we are in a time, as I had mentioned at the beginning of the service, it's been difficult to watch news again this week. So we heard the news from Paris the other day, and we wonder about such things. Could that happen here? Could it happen anywhere? I guess it could. And so we live in times that are, well, it's not what we'd like to see. It's not what we'd like to have happen when we turn on the television. And there are other things. There's challenges with our economy, with our government, with morality, with, I guess you could fill in the blank. There are a number of things about our world today that aren't quite the way we would like them. And so too it was in the times of the disciples when they sat with Jesus asking him about this same thing. The Romans are taking us over and we're not sure if we're safe. We're not sure what to do next. Jesus, what do we do? What do we do, Jesus? We heard from him. What about these great buildings, that temple? You know how big those stones were in this temple that he's talking about? They're massive. I have no idea how this thing was built, but the Wailing Wall is still there today, which is part of the temple of where they were sitting when this story is told. The temple had stones that were 37 feet long. They were 12 feet high and 18 feet wide. That's 3 of these wide, 2 of these high, and 6 of these long. I cannot imagine, even today, with the massive equipment on the face of the earth, with diesel power and hydraulics and all kinds of technology, none of which was available in Jesus' time, how in the world did that thing ever get built? I have no idea. And as they sat there, Jesus said, these stones will fall down. And they're like, whoa, stones that big? I don't think a tornado could take down stones that big. Those are massive stones. They would weigh tons and tons and tons. And yet he predicted the demise of the temple. And it did happen in the year 70. Approximately 40 years after Jesus lived, the temple came down when it was destroyed. It was faced with gold, and it was so bright when the sun would shine on it, because they didn't have Polaroid sunglasses in those days, that it would be blinding in its magnanimity, its size, its beauty, showing the power of Herod. Jesus sat with the temple and predicted that with the disciples. And then they asked him the story which we like to know too. Well, if this is going to happen, Jesus, we believe you. Could you please tell us when? How about you and how about me? Don't we like to know when something might happen? And if we can learn how it's going to happen, it's even better, because we can prepare. We can have things lined up. We can get ready. But Jesus said, wait. Don't be alarmed. Wait and be patient. For if you know you're going on vacation, if you're like me, what do? The last week before you go, especially the last day, you're whacking off things right after left, getting these things lined up, getting ready to go. Want to be ready. Same with the purpose of the disciples today. They wanted to be ready for these end times that Jesus was talking about. And he said, oh no, only God knows the day or the hour. And we live in a time, don't we? People love to predict this. How many times you have seen it? How many times I've seen it? March 12th at 4:30 p.m. Get on the mountaintop, sell all your belongings because the end is near. How many times people get duped into that, and how many more times we've got to listen to it. Jesus said he didn't even know when the end of the world would come. But come it would one day. Be ready, he said. And the point of his lesson today is to, in the living that we are doing minute by minute and day by day, we are a little like Constance Caterpillar. We have our challenges, our repetitious things we do. And yet we're invited to live as though the end was right here. That we would have a heightened sense of awareness of our neighbor. That we would be people of prayer. That we would be followers of Jesus in profound ways. Each of us created only individually as we are to do only what we can do. Not more than we can do, neither less than we can do. Knowing that the end is near, Jesus frees us to live now as if it were tonight. And if it's not tonight, we've lived a day, a gift of God for the day we have been given. We live as though we are ready. And in this time that we live, I think it applies immensely, as it did to the disciples. Because after last week, the anxiety level inside of me goes up. And I'm concerned. I don't want my grandson growing up into a world like that, and neither do you, or your kids, or your loved ones, or anyone who comes now or after us. And so Jesus says, I'm asking you to live with faith, as we walk by faith and not by sight, and that is not easy. We want to know what's coming. And with our technology and our day and age we live in, we really believe that could happen. And yet, as we're reminded, Mr. Andrew was here a little while ago, our weatherman. In spite of all of our technology, we can't predict weather, and I love it. I think it's great. We can't control that either. It's just what happens, right? We must live in faith. Confide, confidence. Confide means with faith. That's how we live as people of God. And when the worries want to overtake us, and the blood pressure starts to go up, and the anxiety means we can't sleep at night, Jesus said, come to me, you who are heavy laden, and you who are filled with worries and anxieties, and I am the one who can give you rest. No one else can do this. Jesus' life, death, and resurrection was meant for us to know that when the worst possible things that could ever come, and sometimes they do, we are not without hope. It's a time for all seasons, it says in Ecclesiastes. I love that reading. It's a wonderful one from the 3rd chapter if you want to go home today and think about that. Time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, time to reap. It's not time to reap until you plant, and it's not time to harvest until there have been many months in between, like Constant Caterpillar and her living. And the thing that I like to consider today from the Holy Scriptures is that God never gets in a hurry. I know I do from time to time. Just got to get one more thing done, and if I go a little quicker, I could get 2, maybe 3. Something in this hand, something in this hand. Anybody ever had that feeling before? Want to do some more? God says, I'm not in a hurry, and you don't need to be in a hurry either. God is never in a hurry, and the amazing thing about all of this is that God is always on time. God's time is the right time. The word nowhere is one that I love to remember. Nowhere. And when you split nowhere, you say, I am now here. When I'm trying to do all of those things, I am nowhere. But when I split it up and break it down and take a breath, I am now here. That's all I can do. That's all you can do. All we can be now here. God's gift for you. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment, this word, this thought, this day. The day that the Lord has made. Might we rejoice and be glad in it. And the words are strange in this verse today because it ends with those challenging words. Nations will be against nations, earthquakes, famines. This is the beginning of the birth pangs. The birth pangs. That is our word of hope, our gospel message for today. Frequently, I've been reminded through my formative years to become a pastor that I must remember that any time we preach a sermon, at least half of the people present are of the opposite gender. And I do not have that perspective. Haven't had the blessing, and that's okay. I'm glad to be who I am. But it's important for me to remember and to preach as though I have some recognition of you who are present. And so when I think of birth pangs, that's definitely not something I can do, nor any other male here. Only something that's the blessing of our females present. And I was thinking about ways to consider that in lieu of our world today. So there's a woman who was asking a friend, age 35 years of age, should a woman have children after 35? And the answer is no, 35's enough, right?
No.
Oh boy, that's bad. I would hope so. I don't know anybody who has got 35. There are a few who have gotten a long ways toward it. And the last I would like to share with you is a woman who was from Washington, D.C., who was in a car accident with child, in a car accident, in a coma for 6 months. A child was to be delivered, and after she woke up, she asked the doctor, "Doctor, what happened to my child?" Well, first of all, the doctor said, "We're so glad you woke up after the 6 months being in a coma. And yes, you had a child. And you had not one, but you had 2 children." "Oh my goodness," she said. "What were they, a boy and a girl?" He said. "Well, they had to be named because you always have to write something on the certificate, right, at the hospital before you can take the baby home. That has to be done. So what were the names?" And the doctor said, "Well, we asked your brother from Maryland." And she said, "Oh no, Not him. Okay, give me the news. What were the names of my children, my boy and my girl? And the doctor said, well, he chose Denise for the girl. And she said, whoa, he surprised me. Not bad. And then she said to him, what about the nephew? What about the son? And the doctor said, well, that's simple. Your brother named him the nephew. Denise and the nephew. All right. Pretty bad, huh? Pretty bad, sorry. Oh, good Lord, have mercy. Maybe on that low note, I should probably hang this up and please remember that in the spite of the dark times, there is hope. And Jesus is our hope, our light, and our truth. Thanks be to God. Amen.